The Central Board for Secondary Education has confirmed that it will conduct trials or a pilot of open book exams where students will be allowed to carry textbooks into the examination hall, refer to them and answer the questions. A pilot project is planned for students between class 9 to 12 at select schools, and the proposal is in line with the national curriculum framework. This is something that could be far-reaching and redefine the idea of learning and exams and how we approach academics. The type of questions, remember, will not be designed to parrot information, but one that would test the students' analytical abilities and build on those. Joining me this evening, Dr. Pragya N. Singh, Director Academics and Assessment at the Central Board for Secondary Education. Thanks for speaking with us, ma'am. If this idea matures, and I think it's still in nascent stages, this would be a big step in rethinking how we approach exams. There are several dimensions to this, and I'm sure you've considered all of them. Give us a quick update of when this first experiment could roll out and what would be key in preparing for it.
Sir, thanks for asking this question. And as you are aware that open book assessment is one of the assessment types which has been recommended by National Curriculum Framework for School Education 2023. It is also in line with one of the key recommendations of National Education Policy 2020, which says about or which recommends about transforming assessment for student development. Now, we are at the ideation stage and also at the preparation stage for different modalities of this assessment. We'll be conducting the pilot in the coming academic session, and this pilot will be conducted to judge the efficacy of this assessment across different classes from 9 to 12 as has been approved. And also, we'll be looking at different perspectives, how the students respond to this assessment, what are the preparations required by the teachers and the schools specifically for this type of assessment, how much time do they take to take this assessment. So there are different parameters on which we'll be doing this pilot in the coming session.
Right, obviously this would mean redesigning question papers as well, and perhaps the academic approach that's adopted for exams overall. Do you see any special challenges, ma'am?
The first and foremost challenge is to adopt it as one of the types of assessment for formative and summative things. And then the challenge is once again developing high quality material which can be used for such kind of assessment, because this would be a part of transforming assessment practices. So, certainly the challenges which we might perceive in this aspect is the stakeholders' perception about this assessment type. These are a few things that we can think of as of now, but certainly during the pilot we'll be coming to a detailed view or detailed things or detailed analysis of the entire assessment when it goes into the schools for piloting.
Fascinating. I understand it's at an ideation stage, ma'am, but and I know that there's a lot of perceptions that need to be changed. But if this works out and falls in place, where do you think, or when do you think it will be a reality for, let's say, students across the country? Is there like a time frame?
Sir, we have to see all aspects related to this assessment, and moreover, we'll be conducting it only for a few classes to begin with, in the initial and in the classes which are 9th and 11th to be specific, and it would be just a pilot stage. But once again, I would reiterate that during the pilot, we'll come to know what are the different insights that we get during the pilot, and that would help us in deciding the future course of action regarding this assessment.
Thanks very much for sharing those details and putting that in perspective, also sharing the thoughts. Joining us also this evening to help understand the idea of an open book exam, Nurain Fasal of the Inventure Academy in Bengaluru. Educationist Sudha Acharya, and a young Triman Sodhi who is taking his 12th standard board exams this year from the modern school in New Delhi. Triman, if I can first ask you, just the sheer thought of an open book exam, you're not going to be able to experience it this year, or it's not going to possibly happen anytime soon. Just the thought of an open book exam, what does it do to a student like you?
Yeah, I think it is something that should be implemented. It does encourage students to have a deeper learning of the concepts instead of just memorizing the notes and the formulas. And it also encourages students to have critical thinking and actually the application of the knowledge which they are learning. I think the main point for me would be that it does reduce a lot of anxiety, because students, they will know that if they need it, they do have access to the notes during the exam, and it leads to the student being much more confident while entering the exam hall. And I feel it's much more realistic to have, in real life scenarios, you always do have the resources available to you. So it's much more realistic. And I think, at least in practical
Right.
subjects like maths and accounts, where formulas, there are a lot of formulas to memorize, I think open book exam should be allowed.
Right, it's fascinating. Yes, you point out anxiety, but Nurain and Sudha, this is really something that's redefining the way we approach exams, right? And it's high time it was done. This is not about Nurain parroting information out, mugging up, and going down to an exam hall, which perhaps results in enormous amount of anxiety. This is more about building a student's analytical skills, and I think the entire system needs to get reoriented to have this successfully implemented. Nurain first.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I completely agree with a young student here. I couldn't quite read the name, Triman, I think. I spoke to a handful of our students and faculty, and they echoed his views. So big thumbs up to CBSE on that one. I think everybody agrees that it teaches very essential life skills like analytical thinking, problem solving, critical thinking, communication, understanding the connectedness between subjects as well as with real life. So students can understand why they're studying a particular subject. And we've seen with the pandemic, we've seen with climate change, there are no easy answers. There are no known answers to known questions. However, I did, to Dr. Singh's point, I did go and have a look at CBSE website to see what was out there to set up this pilot for success and to prepare students and other stakeholders. I looked at one sample, which is on social studies, and had a look at the sample questions. I didn't really think they were very application oriented. There's one which actually said, comment on the following sketch, which basically showed a large circle which indicated population and a smaller circle within that which indicates resources available. So the student was meant to explain what this meant in terms of food availability. So I think it's very important for us to understand what is it that we're trying to achieve and really equip teachers with the kind of subject knowledge that they require, the kind of expertise that they require in terms of framing these kind of assessments, assessing students for it, and of course, preparing students for this as well, right? What I would like to have seen is a question which said, what would you do if you're the agricultural minister of India to address concerns with food security due to increase in population
Right.
or famine or so on? Now, someone might say, hey, you know what? That's not age appropriate. Now, my question is, who's going to decide that? Because CBSE is basically saying that they want teachers to do this. Now, a student might turn around and say, you know what? I don't think it's any of these reasons. I think it's because we don't have good warehousing facilities in India and food grains are rotting. Now, what are you going to say to that? It's out of syllabus. It's not in the
Right.
resource material we provided you with. So I think there are tremendous challenges. I'm glad that CBSE is
Right.
doing a pilot, but I think we need to have very definite success criteria, very definite milestones. We need a range of schools because CBSE is a nationwide board and it caters to students across the length and breadth
Right.
of India. I could go on with some of the
Right.
challenges,
Fascinating
but
points that you make there. Yes, it requires an no, it's fascinating that you make that point, and you made that with that illustration of what kind of an exam, what kind of a question that needs to be made, because this is also about changing mindsets, right, ma'am? I'm going across to Sudha there. It's about changing mindsets. It's not because information in the 21st century is available from a multitude of sources. The robot is going to spit out information. You don't want to make human beings prepared to be robots. You need to develop their analytical ability. And for that, the entire system needs to start thinking very differently. Would that be the key challenge? Both perception and the mindset and the approach to this.
Yeah, NEP 2020 and NCF 2023, they are aligning with competency-based education. We are moving away from content-based education, from rote memorization kind of learning to competency-based education when we are talking about vocationalizing education and skills. OTBA is most welcome aspect, and I really wholeheartedly welcome this initiative of CBSE, which is actually aligning with our national policy. As our young learner point out here, that this will change the whole teaching learning process, the methodology. So the child who doesn't believe in memorizing, it is based on clarity, concept, understanding. But as ma'am said, a lot of success depends on the formulation of right kind of question paper. It leads to student driven learning. Students take the ownership of learning because it was actually experimented during CCE, Continuous Comprehensive Evaluation, from 2014 to 2018. My subject is economics, so we had OTBA that time. So the chapters are indicated and supplementary reading material will be given by the CBSE, and it leads to individual research
Right.
work by the student, which is missing now in Indian education system. So that's why I really welcome that child will go
Right.
interdisciplinary, and it will create inquisitiveness to explore, to experiment, and to go much beyond textbook. Textbook is just a guideline. As you said, universal accessibility of information. It is easily available.
Right.
So NCERT book is available everywhere. So here it will
Right.
lead the child to self-driven
Right.
and self-assessment also. It's a very welcoming aspect. And I think that it will bring in some
Right.
transformation
Very
in
well.
Indian education system.
Right, it's an important point that you make there. I've just have very little time left. A very, very quick response from you and Triman, Nurain and Triman. This is possibly going to test whether the student is smarter than the teacher. The teacher needs to accept that possibly sometimes the student's going to be smarter than them, thinking out of the box, and the student's got a chance to prove that. Yes or no?
Yes, of course. So the formulation of question paper is most important aspect of OTBA,
Right.
which is really leading. Even if all the study materials are
And-
with you, you have to apply your mind. You have to synthesize. You have to evaluate. You have to reflect, and
Right,
then
Triman?
automatically you can answer.
Yeah, I think that is going to be one of the biggest challenges when, conducting examinations, open book. You'll have to keep in mind that the questions which are asked in the exam
Right.
are not actually inside of the book. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to do, but
But that's outside.
yeah, it has its
It tests you.
benefits.
Right. Right. Thanks. On that note, thank you, Nurain, Triman. I wish we could continue this conversation, Ms. Sudha, as well, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. And